I come to tell a story to all who wish to hear it. This is the telling of a life and the celebration of an afterlife. I first learned of Clara Hancock's as the subject of an article I'd read while working on a project with a friend. As luck would have it, he saved the magazine because of the article, as she was a good friend of his. I finally met Clara in her home, where paintings by her husband, awards and photographs chronicled her life. The walls told of a woman who lived every moment, a woman who loved with passion, a woman who I felt knew herself. What first caught my eye was the striking image of a young woman riding a motorcycle, decades before such a thing was acceptable for a woman to do. She was smiling and had the air of a woman in control of her destiny. I knew that I wanted to know who she was. I wanted to look into her life. So I pressed my friend for an introduction to her. We started off chatting about her roots. I asked her what drove her life choices. Being born a woman in a man's world, Clara detailed how she was painfully aware of the prejudice against her gender, a prejudice first introduced by her own parents. So she took this negative attitude and worked to prove that she could do what a son was expected to do.
And I'm curious to know, prior to this life that you are in now, what was Clara Hancock's then, before you found yourself?
I was the one who got the awards. And I got the awards not for this life, but for my previous life, which was the life of a hard-working journalist with deadlines around the clock who traveled around the world for her company and who wanted nothing more out of life and didn't conceive of anything more than being good at my work. I'm wanting people to read the stuff that I've written, and they did, and wanting my parents to be supported by my earnings, which was why I wanted.
Born in 1918, Clara's childhood was affected by her experiences in the Depression era. She spoke of those hard times and the poverty with a sharp recollection, and how she began who she was and needed to be.
One thing, we were needy, and we came from a needy world. And I knew that best when I was about 11 years old and came home from school. And this was in 1929 or 30. And there were my parents in the street with all the furniture on the sidewalk. And the look on the face of my parents when they realized that I had discovered them in this terribly disgraceful scene, that they had to show their daughter, that they were thrown out of their apartment with all their belongings. My, that gave me the power to be what I was thereafter, even now.
She began to feel a need to know her soul, and it was her father's reluctance to help her learn of things spiritual that fueled her drive to understand, beginning with a Jewish mysticism called Kabbalah, and entering the moment of here and now.
I said, Papa, what is Kabbalah? And that was a long time ago when Kabbalah wasn't popular like it is now. And Papa said, you shouldn't ask such a question. And I said, why not? I had heard about it somewhere. And he said, this is not for women. Now, my father loved me more than any creature or thing in the world. I was his only child. He adored me. And yet he refused to tell me what is Kabbalah, because that is not for women. So it was so startling, a revelation, that being a woman not only interfered with my presumed ability to support my parents as a boy would, but it also interfered with my ability to study spiritual things like Kabbalah. And so I made up my mind right then and there. And you see the results. I have been studying Kabbalah for years, and in fact it was Kabbalah that I credit with bringing me into the work.
Work. She kept mentioning work through our chat, and it was clear that her meaning was far removed from mere physical labor. She had invited two of her dearest friends to sit with us, explaining that she could not tell me anything about herself without the input of her mentor, John, and her friend, Danny.
Or wishing it were true. The great moment came the day that I had been in the work for 3 or 4 years already. Maybe that's too long a time. Although I know that there are some people who've been working for 20 years and haven't achieved that knowledge. But I know when it came to me, and that was out of the blue sky. Something happened at that moment. Like there was a little door inside of my solar plexus, and it opened, and out came pure joy.
As I understood it, Clara credited finding this joy through the work, an inner work taught to her by John, work based on the methods and teachings of a man named George Gurdjieff. Who was Gurdjieff?
What we know is just the smallest part. We know that he was a teacher of many important people, that people dedicated their life to his teaching. Those who knew him have spoken of his sensitivity, his intelligence, his vast understanding of man and the reason why we're here. Gurdjieff was not only a writer and a teacher of this inner work, but he was also a musician, and he was also called himself a teacher of dancing, and he taught us what we call the movements, which is another way of bringing his teaching. The music is regarded as a way of bringing his teaching. The written works are a way of bringing his teaching, and also the groups, the private groups that we don't really talk too much about, but there are groups of people who meet together, who study the work.
In the company of this collective energy, I felt a sense of belonging, so strangely complete. As they chatted, I felt they were describing the very condition of my current state of soul. I felt my spirit stirring, like a cat awakened by some odd sound. I felt it seeking out this knowledge. How could they know of my desire to find meaning? Was it that obvious? Or is it that all of us are all so similar, all in need of something higher and to feel something deeper? All of us separate bodies with a singular dilemma.
So why do they call it work?
Because we ordinarily trust, you might say, the law of accident. We ordinarily trust our associative thought. And to escape this mechanicality requires an effort. That effort comes when I begin to try to focus my attention, to listen to a certain stillness, that each time it's a new search, that each time it's a new beginning. So we begin again and again, and so it is in life, that we have to begin again, each moment a new search.
I listened more intently. I felt like a starving man who was suddenly served a banquet. This conversation was awakening in me a hunger to know more. and everything they spoke had a taste of the spiritual. Although I was new to this path, the language seemed strangely familiar to me. I was so moved by John's way of expressing the unsayable. While they spoke, I was captivated by the paintings on the wall. I later found out they were done by Danny.
So, Danny, how did you first come to know Clara?
Well, I've known Clara for 30-some years, to be exact, 33 years,
Wow.
hard to believe. And we met through a mutual friend. And we've been friends, really deeply friends, for the past 10 years, where we saw each other much more often than before. And of course, I see Clara every day, rain or shine. So our friendship has deepened, and have become much more meaningful to me. Clara is family. When I come here, I come home.
Didn't you once tell me, or recently tell me, that most of your paintings come to you when you wake up in the morning from a dream?
Yeah.
And then you feel impelled to paint it?
Mm-hmm. They all come, and that only started with the work.
Well, I have to take pride in something that I've done, and that is, I do believe that I invited Danny into the work.
Of course you did, sure.
I'm so glad that you remember that.
And it wasn't a simple task either. I was not.
No, you weren't.
I was
ready.
resistant.
You weren't ready to jump.
I was traveling a lot and didn't have a regular schedule. But you pushed and pushed, and finally, I came.
And what a wonderful revelation it was for you and for me to watch and observe what the work has helped you do right here on the wall.
Absolutely. It's almost like something inside my brain says, okay, it's time for the next one. And it's been born during the night. And in the morning, I wake up with the impression that's very clear, very specific, very detailed, and exactly as the painting ended up being. And when I finish it, I have the room for the next dream, and usually they come, as you know.
I mean, they flow out of him, his works. They just flow out.
Someone told me once that he had visited a good friend who was a Zen master, and he asked the Zen master, how did he teach? And the Zen master turned and walked away, and as he walked away, he said, I teach with my back. I teach with my back. I teach with my back.
So what does that mean?
So what it means is that it's not anything I say. I really don't know what to say. It's not any gesture that I can make, because I don't know that gesture. But I know through experience how to begin to search in myself. And when I really can dedicate my attention to that, in this moment, this particular moment, as we sit here being filmed, when I dedicate my attention to that, others feel it.
So, Clara, among the things that have brought us here today is an awareness of something that you are going through physically. Are you ill at this time in your life? And how does that affect you with the work?
Well, I'm in my 8th decade. And in my first 7 decades or so, or maybe 6.5, I was well, I described to you. I was a tough girl who worked for a living and enjoyed every minute of it, I have to confess. Then suddenly, when I was in my middle 70s, something began to happen. I felt a strange little pain running down my leg. Well, I don't care, so I did. So I paid no attention. But after a while, it got so that I couldn't walk. I couldn't even stand up. My legs wouldn't hold my weight. I simply would crash down to the floor. And I went to see the doctor, and we found out that my spine had always been very curved, and that it was curving even more. Scoliosis is what I've got, and it's not the kind of scoliosis that you're born with and it just stays that way, but it's degenerative scoliosis. It keeps getting worse and worse and worse, and the shape of my body has changed, and it's painful. It's extremely painful. And so in addition to all of that, I went and found out several months ago that I had, unbeknownst to me, contracted 2 nice big cancers in my body. And now, it is so far gone, that my cancers, that the doctors say there's no hope for surgery or anything like that, and I would just have to live until I die. And that's just what I'm doing. And thank goodness, I'm not worried about it. I'm happy to wait and see if all the things that I believe are going to be true. The work helps me prepare for it by bringing me into a state of consciousness that is beyond everyday consciousness, but a higher consciousness. A consciousness so high that I have moments of really high consciousness in the work that will, I think and hope, will prepare me to meet a higher level in another life.
Looking within, we discover a kind of life in us that we can know that's endless. We only know that in the stillness. We only know that in the very valid moments of our search. But knowing that endless life within us, that is what I expect to join. That is what I could expect to discover in my death.
Me too.
It has done tremendous amount of small little miracles on a daily basis.
It means something better than what you are or ever thought yourself to be. Discovering the undiscoverable until now. And that is how I got into the work.
This is a transforming work, and it changes me, not in the future, but in this very moment now. So, is that what I could discover as my life after life? Not necessarily, not that it's mine in the sense it's universal. It belongs to God. But I belong to God. You belong to God. God made us, so we are God's. God's property. And because we're God's, we're sacred. When we listen to this sacred sound, this stillness, and that's the voice of God.
As I drove home that evening, I felt as if I had finally found my way. I felt as if I was going to where it is I need to be, on the road that went beyond myself as I knew me, and led to who I am on the other side of the veil. As Clara prepares to take her one last walk in the sun, I have just begun my own journey. I can only hope to find the door to joy which Clara has so eloquently described and so gracefully lived. These 3 people who spoke more with their spirits than with their lips have evoked in me a realization. They've given me a glimpse into the most genuine part of who I am. They've changed the way I experience the world. There are so many ways to exist, but now I am aware of my life. I feel like I am awakening, and now I know I am alive.
Out came an awareness that I was alive in a way that I had never felt life before. Even colors came out, like a rainbow came out of my mind. That had never happened before, and it has only rarely happened to that extent since. But I keep trying and working toward that repeat of that God-given moment every single minute of my aware life, because it made me know that the work works.